what you're saying. Pathikrit Payne is also joining us in the broadcast now. Pathikrit, what do you make of the progress made in the last 24 hours towards peace for Ukraine, and how should India be viewing this meeting, given the secondary sanctions imposed on us, which have a direct correlation with the conflict for the US?
Uday, first and foremost, my best wishes of Janmashtami to you, my respected fellow panelists, and all the audience and viewers of NewsX. Let me put it this way: last 24 hours has been a reality check for Donald Trump that all these threats of sanctions, consequences do not necessarily always work, especially when it comes to Russia and other BRICS members. You see, I think this decision by Trump that he may not put that additional 25% tariff, it may not be linked to the entire conflict or reconciliation on that, but primarily because there is a considerable amount of heat in America as well, that suddenly for that 40-50 odd billion dollar that they import from India, on which this would have an impact, suddenly for them to find an alternate supply chain which is reliable will not be easy, and there will be impact on that. So I think he knows that things are heating up in America when it comes to the inflationary pressures. Secondly, if you look at the outcome of this meeting, well, the meeting actually showed that Putin knows how to deal with situations. There cannot be an instant ceasefire like instant noodle, because if you have an instant ceasefire, then Putin would say that soldiers would remain as they were and where they are stationed, which means there will be no exchange of lands. Secondly, I think Putin has been time and again saying about one thing, that you have to go back to the core issue. The core issue is the expansionist approach of NATO. The core issue is about arming of Ukraine, and the fact that NATO has been fighting this war by putting the gun on the shoulders of the Ukrainians. So Putin wants it very clear that you need to go to the core issue. Second, also important is this: there is a wedge today between the Western European countries and United States. There is an apprehension among the European countries that eventually the Americans and the Russians may have a deal on their own, completely bypassing the interest of European Union. And that is where I think Putin has been very successful in creating that void, creating that division. So I think today Trump realizes that all that pomp and show, showing those F-35 Joint Strike Fighters on both sides, that you have to intimidate Putin when he comes to Anchorage in Alaska for the meeting, is not going to work out. While going back, Putin said, let's have the next meeting in Moscow. I mean, I think Trump was completely taken by surprise. He wasn't expecting that. So if you have a series of dialogues with Russia, and then Trump would have to go to Moscow, then it's almost like the entire isolationist approach that NATO had, EU had towards Putin is gone. See, I think Ukraine is still a small player in the whole scheme of things. Eventually, I do not think that Trump, if he forces a negotiation, it's going to work. I do not think the Russians would agree if they are not allowed to keep the land what they have. And I don't think any of the ceasefire will be accepted by the European Unions if their intents are not taken into account. So overall, having a cessation of conflict, having a peace deal will be desirable by all, but it may not happen so soon. That is a problem, that's a predicament. It's better Trump understands. But I think Trump got what he wanted in this thing. He wanted some footage. He wanted some publicity stunt. He was told by Putin that had he been the president in 2022, then the war would not have happened. This would be the headline, Uday, tomorrow in all the newspapers in United States. And Trump would say that, look, I was the one who imposed a tariff on India, and so Putin came for the meeting. So he looks for these short-term victories. It doesn't seem that he wants a long-term strategy he has in mind when it comes to ending the conflict. I believe Russia today is such a de-dollarized economy. It has so little dependence on the American exports that all these threats of consequence, tariffs, sanctions are not going to impact them anymore. I mean, if you look at the present figures, India is right now importing 2 million barrels per day oil from Russia in spite of the threats of sanctions. And that 50% tariff, if it eventually comes, then it would help India to become far more resilient, because it's going to diversify the market towards another 40, 50 odd smaller countries. It may put effort, and the contingency funds have been kept in place to take care of the exporters in the short to medium term. But I think it is also a reality check for us that there is a price that you have to pay when it comes to United States as your strategic partner. It doesn't mean that you give away with all the relationship. That will remain, but you would have hiccups in between. That's why that 80-20 concept is important. Our entire focus of the economy, 80%, has to be on internal consumption. So the GST reduction that Prime Minister Modi mentioned about as a Diwali gift, national manufacturing mission that is coming up, all are aimed at reinvigorating, deepening the internal consumption architecture, so that your dependence on exports are limited around 20% of the GDP only, nothing more than that. So I think whatever has happened, if Trump was hoping that he would completely dismantle BRICS or weaken the BRICS members, it has not happened that way. And I think that is the outcome in the last 24 hours.
All right. Point taken.